This is the birthplace of modernity. It's over here in France, 230 years ago, the French Revolution began, which completely reshaped our world order. It gave us the modern world, gave us democracy, human rights, nation-states, constitutions, representative government, secularism, and so much more. It also set off a wave of revolutions across Europe and around the world. So this is an extremely important topic that we're going to be doing 2 episodes on. Today we're going to explore the revolution itself. Next week, we'll explore its aftermath. But as you know, all great things take time to build, and this revolution was no exception. It took place over a period of nearly 10 years. It had its highs and lows. It was extremely tumultuous and violent. There were multiple phases to it, and we'll explore all of that on today's episode of The Epic History. When most people think of the French Revolution, they usually think of the storming of the Bastille, guillotines, Marie Antoinette, and Robespierre. But really, what caused it? There were a lot of factors. But when you look at it closely, it seems clear that the main one was social inequality. You see, French society was divided into 3 estates. The first estate was made up of the clergy, about 1% of the population who owned about 10% of the land and didn't pay taxes. The second estate was made up of the nobility, about 2% of the population who also didn't pay taxes and owned about 20% of the land. And then there was the third estate, which was everyone else, like the merchants, the farmers, the workers, etc. And together, they owned about 70% of the land, but paid 100% of the taxes. And this inequality was just too much. Like the vast majority of people were sick and tired of being exploited by the privileged minority and wanted change. And it just so happened that at the same time, Enlightenment ideas started seeping into France from across the Channel in Britain. Ideas like natural rights, popular sovereignty, separation of powers, social contract theory, individual liberty, due process of law, and above all, democracy. All of these ideas were spreading through salons and coffee houses and books and pamphlets, and people were getting fed up with absolute monarchy and wanted a say in their own government. They wanted a constitution and representative government, so the stage was set for revolution. In 1787, King Louis XVI called the Estates General, a representative body consisting of members from each of the 3 estates, in order to address the financial crisis he was facing. However, voting in the Estates General was done by estate, and since each estate had 1 vote, the king could always outvote the other 2 if he sided with the clergy or the nobility, which he usually did. And this meant that the third estate had absolutely no voice in government. But this time they demanded that voting be done by head instead of by estate, so that the third estate would have more voting power. When the king refused, the members of the third estate walked out and formed their own assembly called the National Assembly and vowed not to disband until France had a constitution. This was a huge deal. For the first time in history, an entire estate was rebelling against the king and demanding democracy. And so the revolution began. At first it was relatively peaceful, but then things got violent and we don't exactly know why. Some historians blame it on the fact that Enlightenment ideas made the French people too emotional and idealistic. Others blame it on the influence of the American example. And still others blame it on the failure of the French nobility to side with the people. But whatever the cause, it quickly spiraled out of control. In 1789, the people of Paris stormed the Bastille, a royal fortress that had been used to imprison political prisoners. It was a symbol of royal tyranny, and its fall was a symbolic representation of the revolution as a whole. From there, the revolution rapidly accelerated. In 1791, the king and his family tried to escape to Austria, but were caught and brought back. In 1792, war broke out between France and the rest of Europe, who all saw the French Revolution as a threat to their own power. In 1793, Louis XVI was executed by the guillotine, as was Marie Antoinette, along with hundreds of thousands of others. In 1794, Robespierre and the Jacobins fell from power, and the Reign of Terror came to an end. And in 1795, Napoleon seized power in a coup d'etat, ending the revolution and establishing the French consulate. I said, as you can see, the French Revolution was an extremely turbulent and bloody affair. But despite its flaws, it was also a necessary one. It was the first true revolution in history, the first time that ordinary people had risen up and fought for democracy, for their rights, for their liberties. It was the first time that the idea of human rights had been put into practice, and it was the first time that the idea of the nation-state had been born. And although the revolution ultimately failed to achieve its goals, its ideals did not. Its call for liberty, equality, and fraternity continues to echo around the world today. Just think of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Isn't it really a struggle for democracy and freedom against autocracy and oppression? Isn't it really a struggle for liberty, equality, and fraternity? Or what about the ongoing struggle for gender equality, racial justice, social justice? Isn't it really a struggle for liberty, equality, and fraternity? The ideals of the French Revolution are still alive and well today. They're still inspiring people to fight for a better world. See, the French Revolution was more than just a revolution. It was a new way of thinking, a new way of organizing society, a new way of interacting with the world. It introduced concepts like popular sovereignty, the social contract, human rights, separation of powers, checks and balances, and above all, democracy. These ideas had a profound impact on the course of world history. They spread throughout Europe and eventually around the world. They inspired other revolutions, and they helped to create the modern world we live in today. Now, the impact of the French Revolution can be seen everywhere if you know where to look. Take, for example, the American Revolution. It's no coincidence that it happened just after the French Revolution. In fact, the American Revolution was partly inspired by the French Revolution. The Americans were fighting for the same things as the French: liberty, equality, fraternity. The American Declaration of Independence was heavily influenced by the French Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. And many American leaders, including Thomas Jefferson, were admirers of the French Revolution. Then there's the Haitian Revolution, which was the first successful slave rebellion in history. It was also inspired by the French Revolution and its ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity. The Haitian revolutionaries were fighting to end slavery and to create a free and equal society. They were inspired by the French Revolution because it showed them that it was possible to overthrow the old order and to create a new one. Or consider the Russian Revolution. Again, it's no coincidence that it happened after the French Revolution. The Russian revolutionaries were fighting for the same things as the French: an end to autocracy, the establishment of democracy, the protection of human rights. In fact, the Bolsheviks adopted the French tricolor of red, white, and blue as one of their symbols. Or take Latin America. When the Spanish colonies revolted against their Spanish masters, they were inspired by the French Revolution. In fact, Simon Bolivar, the leader of the Venezuelan independence movement, was a self-proclaimed admirer of the French Revolution. He said that the French Revolution was like a second Iliad, an epic poem that told the story of the French Revolution. And finally, we should consider the impact of the French Revolution on the development of modern nation-states. The French Revolution was one of the first movements to emphasize the importance of national identity. The revolutionaries created a new French flag, the tricolor of blue, white, and red, and they began to promote a sense of French national identity. This had a profound impact on the development of modern nation-states. In fact, the French Revolution is often seen as the starting point of the process that led to the creation of modern nation-states. However, we must also acknowledge the negative impacts of the French Revolution. Despite its lofty ideals, the revolution was also a time of great violence and upheaval. Thousands of people were executed during the Reign of Terror, and the revolution ultimately failed to achieve its goals. Nevertheless, the ideals of the French Revolution continued to inspire people around the world today. The call for liberty, equality, and fraternity continues to echo around the world. In conclusion, the French Revolution was a watershed moment in world history. It marked the end of the old order and the beginning of the modern world. It gave us the modern world order, modern ideas, modern institutions, modern ways of thinking. It was a complex and contradictory process, but ultimately, it was a positive one. The ideals of the French Revolution continued to inspire people around the world today. The call for liberty, equality, and fraternity is as relevant today as it was 230 years ago. As we move into our next episode about the aftermath of the French Revolution and its impact on the world, we should remember that the French Revolution was more than just a revolution. It was a new way of thinking, a new way of organizing society, a new way of interacting with the world. It introduced concepts like popular sovereignty, the social contract, human rights, separation of powers, checks and balances, and above all, democracy. These ideas had a profound impact on the course of world history. They spread throughout Europe and eventually around the world. They inspired other revolutions, and they helped to create the modern world we live in today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. If you want to learn more about the French Revolution, check out the links in the description below. And finally, do not forget to tune in next week for part 2 of this series, where we'll be exploring the aftermath of the French Revolution and its impact on the world.